send out the invites, or at least send out the notice that we're live. Let me see here. Watch out, there it is. All right, I'm going to share this on YouTube real quick. Let me turn that down. Alrighty, copy link. And all the notices should have gone out already, but we're going to go ahead and we are live. And post the link. Bam. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Comix Conspiracy 100 subscriber poorly planned extravaganza. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about cryptids today. This is the Comix Conspiracy. So let's see, I've got my lovely wife here, Mrs. Dave Comics, and she'll be monitoring the chat for me. And we're going to cover, since this is the Comix Conspiracy, we're going to cover comics news. Since I don't have anybody here yet today, everybody's stealing the audience tonight. Let's see. We're going to go over a little bit of comics news. The first thing we're going to cover is the Indiegogos for the week. Let's see. Right now, Cyberfrog came back for a week starting last Wednesday.
As of an hour ago.
Yeah, as of an hour ago. These are the numbers, are a little bit late. But as of an hour ago, he has Cyberfrog was up to $53,897. It has reached its $50,000 stretch goal, which means they'll be giving $10,000 to a cancer research charity in the UK somewhere, I believe. Let's see. That's 3 days left on that campaign. So if you haven't gotten your Cyberfrog, now's the time. It's got a new cover. A new variant cover specifically for this 1 week time period. All right, Tim Lim's Trump Space Force. We're up to $69,767. There's only about 6 hours left on that one. That one looks like another good one. Definitely go check that one out. Let's see. Red Rooster is fully funded, and they're still open. You can still get your Red Roosters. By the Brightwisers. That's up at $167,646. Let's see. Also funded and open, John De La Rose's Flying Sparks. It reached $29,115. You can still purchase that one. Looks like we got one viewer on here.
Patrick.
So yeah, that one's fully funded and ready to go. Lone Star, also fully funded and open. Right now, they're up to $83,047. Mike Miller's, I actually logged onto that one. So I'm actually, let's see, I've already got Cyberfrog. I'm already on Lone Star. Also, I'm on Ravage. These are all ones I've backed. Ravage is $43,702. Also fully funded. It's from Chuck Dixon and Ben Henderson. That one also looks good. Let's see. Graveyard Shift just opened a couple weeks ago, I believe. Maybe last week. They're up to $43,963. And let's see. They've got 17 days left in there, so you've still got plenty of time to pick up Graveyard Shift. But don't wait too long. That's John Malin's new project, and that one looks really cool. Bigfoot Bill, Doug to Naples project's up to $50,711, and that one's got 10 days left. So I definitely pick that one up. Let's see. we have pretty much one viewer. Excuse me. Yeah, we got one viewer. So if there's anybody that wants to jump on, feel free. Otherwise, I'll just be talking to myself here pretty much for a little bit before I shut it down. Let's see. Yeah, nobody wants to hear me talk to myself. But let's see. We will be talking cryptids. If you come on, let's see. Bigfoot and the Yeti. We're going to discuss whether we think it's the same animal. Let's see. Well, I'd like to get a few of you on so we can check out. We're going to go through a list of a whole bunch of different kinds of cryptids and see what people are looking at, what they believe in. Let's see. We'll be discussing stuff like lake monsters and the Jersey Devil and all kinds of other fun stuff. So we'll give a few more minutes to get people to come on. Let me see. I think I got a few stories here. Maybe we'll read a little story. I'm looking at I got a book here by John A. Keel, and he's the author of the Mothman Prophecies, but he's also the author of the Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings. So that's kind of been my little reference book. We'll pick one out of here and we'll just read for a little bit, because there's some really interesting stories. As you all may or may not know, I'm a pretty big skeptic as far as all this stuff goes. But I'm also a comic book writer, so all these stories I find really interesting. I don't necessarily believe them all, but I really like the ideas, and I think they make for good stories. So let me see. Let's pick one out of here. All right, so from the Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings by John A. Keel, we're going to read a little bit from Chapter 8. Meanwhile, in Russia. Pity the poor Yeti. He doesn't exist, but he doesn't have enough brains to realize it. The mystery of the giant footprints has been solved many times by many Type B scientists. Back in 1958, a Wire story quoted an anthropologist from Johns Hopkins University explaining that the Yeti footprints were made by natives wearing sandals with their big toes sticking out. The natives of the Himalayas apparently never read the story, and so they continue to wear heavy boots when they're wading around in the mountain snows. Somebody is always shooting at these hairy illusions, and there are a number of documented accounts of the creatures having been shot dead or captured and dying slowly in captivity. The real myth seems to be the scientific allegation that the abominable snowman does not exist, has never existed, and cannot possibly exist. China has produced a considerable amount of abominable snowman lore, and a good part of it correlates favorably with the material from the Himalayas and even from Canada. One story relates how a group of Chinese hunters came upon an abominable snowman in 1913, shot and wounded it, carrying it triumphantly to Patang in Xinjiang province, where it survived for some months. The late Frank Edwards described it in Stranger Than Science as a creature with a black monkey-like face, covered with silvery yellow hair, several inches long. It had exceptionally powerful hands and had feet much like those of a human rather than an ape. It grunted and made guttural sounds, but spent most of its time pursing its lips and making loud whistling noises. In 1954, a Chinese official in the Yunnan province told some visiting Russians that a hair-covered race of subhumans thrived in the mountains of western Yunnan. One of them had even been captured a few years earlier and brought to Kunming. The Chinese called them Jinsung, or bear men. In other regions, the Chinese speak of a giant hairy animal known locally as Kradan and Bek Bok. It is well known to the tribes of the Gobi Desert and the people of Mongolia. The ancient Chinese literature frequently alludes to these hairy mountain men. It would take a book twice the length of this one just to list the many available literary references extant. Explorers and expeditions to those far corners have returned with a wealth of information about these fascinating animals, and numerous accounts and descriptions have been published in random scientific journals over the years. With the exception of the European stories and some of those reports from Canada, it seems the majority of these creatures are accompanied by a pungent, very unpleasant odor. This stink seems to exceed normal animal smells and could eventually offer some kind of clue to the body chemistry of the creatures. For now, we can only conclude that the abominable snowman is using the wrong kind of soap. North of Tibet and west of China, Russia has several isolated pockets where abominable snowman types seem to abound. Russian scientists have long had a special interest in the Yeti and have periodically sent out expeditions to try to learn more about them. A number of well-documented reports have come from Russia and have been collected and translated by Ivan T. Sanderson. A good part of Yeti literature in the United States is based entirely upon Mr. Sanderson's research and writings, usually without mentioning his name at all. We are therefore going to give Mr. Sanderson full credit before we proceed to steal some choice items from his work. In Abominable Snowmen, The Legend Come to Life, Sanderson deals at length with the geographical distribution of the Abominable Snowman stories and points out how unlikely it is for separate, isolated cultures to come up with identical details, unless there was some definite truth underlying those details. Tribes speaking entirely different languages and remaining almost completely isolated from other tribes of their own race have managed to produce identical Abominable Snowman data. Even in the United States, where general communications are superb in comparison to the remote fastness of Tibet and China, the many annual encounters with the Abominable Snowman types rarely receive any publicity beyond the areas where they occurred. Monster stories, like flying saucer tales, are human interest, quote, items and rarely receive much notice in the national press. This dearth of published reports is in our favor, since few witnesses have ever heard of these things before their own encounter. While most Americans have now read random superficial items about both Yetis and UFOs, they have not been exposed to the information necessary for the construction of a convincing false report. Russia could conceivably capture a whole tribe of Yetis, and we might never know it until they put them on display at the next World's Fair. Material published in the Russian language rarely filters down to American monster buffs. Whole states in the United States. Well, I'm going to pause here real quick because I think this book was written probably before Twitter and most of the internet. So you can take a lot of that. I'm pretty sure that if the Russians captured a tribe of Bigfoots, that it would probably make it to the internet fairly quickly. All right, so let's see. Whole states in the United States have been thrown into an uproar over monster mania in recent years, with armies of armed men, police dogs, and helicopters searching hundreds of square miles in vain efforts to locate the unbelievable creatures which were reportedly slaughtering domestic animals and terrifying farmers. But what causes headlines in the newspaper in one state is often ignored altogether in the press of adjoining states. News of these monster panics rarely appear in the New York Times or Time and Newsweek. We live in a world so filled with hard news of war and disaster that these more unusual events are reduced to the status of fillers and human interest items. Collectors of esoterica tend to regard all of this as some form of sinister censorship and circulate wild stories about how the government suppresses the news of such events. All right, we're going to pause there real quick and see, do we have any, let's see who we got today. Mrs. David Comics. Hey, Illuminati, how's it going? Sometimes small and low-key projects are great unless you want money. That's my intent with this channel. Well, that's cool. Let's see. I got kind of famous on an account or two, put in blogs and videos and stuff, but I'll be honest, I disliked it a lot. People expect me to be perfect all the time. Well, nobody is perfect all the time. Dick Feverstone, how's it going? Thank you very much for stopping by. We're going to be reading a little bit from this book. If anybody wants to hop on the crank line or just pop in if you have if you like talking about cryptids. I've got a whole list of cryptids here. And what I want to do is if we get enough people, tell you what, how many people? Speak up. How many people we got today? Let's see. Oh, it looks like 2 and Mrs. Dave Comics. So what I'll do is I'll read for a little bit more, and then we'll go ahead and we'll go over a list of cryptids if we can get a big enough audience in here. We'll get a list of cryptids, and we'll see how many people believe in what. So I'll read a little bit more from this chapter. Are you all liking what I'm doing? Reading the chapter right now? Is that cool with you guys?
I'm just trying to let you so that you don't freak out.
And now we're silent. I got Mrs. Dave Comics, the wife, and Junior Dave Comics is in here as well, in the room. Sasquatch out hunting ducks. I've never heard one, but I was out hunting one time. I was out bear hunting when I lived in Vermont, northern Vermont, and I was out in the middle of the woods, and I'd always heard stories about them banging sticks against trees or something. And I swear I heard it sounded like somebody was taking a big old stick and banging it against a tree, just like out in the middle of nowhere. And I think it was probably somebody just out goofing off. But it was kind of freaky when I didn't see anybody wandering around.
Keep reading.
All right. So we're going to continue with this chapter. Let's see. We're talking about the Russians and the Russian Bigfoots. All right. In countries such as the former Soviet Union, where the press really is controlled and censored by the government, there are certain to be even fewer published reports. There lives in Moscow today a scientist by the name of V.A. Kaklov, Sanderson writes, who in 1913 submitted a full and detailed report on the East Asiatic abominable snowmen to the Russian Imperial Academy of Sciences. This priceless material was shelved, he was denied funds to continue his field investigations, and he was frankly told to shut up. And that's probably because the Bigfoots were not in the Communist Party. Let's see. In more recent years, some maverick Russian scientists have begun to take a more open interest in the abominable snowman mystery, and a few papers on the subject have been circulated in limited numbers. A geologist named B.M. Zdorik claims that he stumbled upon a sleeping creature in 1934 while trekking along the Darwaz Ridge in the Pamirs. He was about 1.5 meters in length, approximately 4 feet 10 inches, Zdorik reported. The head and the forward limbs could not be seen because they were hidden by a growth of wild oats. The legs, however, could be seen. They had black naked soles and were too long and graceful to have belonged to a bear. His back was also too flat to be a bear's. The whole body of this animal was covered with fur, more like the fur of a yak than the rich fur of a bear. The color of the fur was a grayish brown, somewhat more prominent brown than a bear's. His guide was badly frightened by this sight, and the two men did not stay to study the creatures more closely. Legends of these creatures abound throughout Pamir mountain range. A man in Cheshteb is supposed to have wrestled with one of them in 1939. He was out hunting around 4 p.m. when the animal sprang at him. Now this hunter wrestled with Gul Biavan, the story goes. The Gul Biavan was covered with short, soft wool, and the man could not get hold of anything. On the face of this man, there was also short wool, and there was a terrible odor coming from him. Finally, the hunter was able to throw the Gul Biavan to the ground, but at the time he lost consciousness himself. The villagers came upon the man and brought him home. The ground around him bore evidence of this wrestling match. While camping near the head of the Jermut River in Russia, Professor V.K. Leontiev reportedly obtained a brief glimpse of a Yeti type. It was in August 1957, and the professor's adventure began when he heard an unusual cry. It wasn't like the yell of an animal. Not any wild animal or bird known to me could make such a sound. And yet it couldn't be a human being either, the professor wrote. Shortly afterward, he saw something moving across a field of snow about 150 feet away. He was walking on his feet, not touching the ground with his hands, Leontiev continued. His shoulders were unusually wide. His body was covered with long, dark hair. He was about 2.2 meters, about 7 feet tall. The professor said he picked up his rifle and fired at the being. At the sound of the shot, the creature took off at incredible speed and disappeared into some high rocks beyond the snowfield. Large footprints were left behind. The Russian Information Service supplied Mr. Sanderson with a translation of the following testimony from Lieutenant Colonel V.S. Karapetyan of the Medical Service of the Soviet Army. This was his report. From October to December of 1941, our infantry battalion was stationed some 30 kilometers from the town of Buyansk in the Dagestan ASSR. One day, the representative of the local authorities asked me to examine a man caught in the surrounding mountains and brought to the district center. My medical advice was needed to establish whether or not this curious creature was a disguised spy. I entered a shed with two members. Can you imagine if you're a spy, James Bond dressed up like Chewbacca running around in the Russian wilderness? Hey, we found this guy. He's got like long hair and he's like super tall. He kind of looks like a gorilla. Yeah, we're trying to figure out if he's a spy. Yeah. Let's see. I entered a shed with two members of the local authorities when I asked why I had to examine the man in a cold shed and not in a warm room. I was told that the prisoner could not be kept in a warm room. He had sweated in the house so profusely that they had to keep him in the shed. I can still see the creature as it stood before me, a male, naked and barefooted. And it was doubtlessly a man because its entire shape was human. The chest, back, and shoulders, however, were covered with shaggy hair of a dark brown color. This fur of his was much like that of a bear and 2 to 3 centimeters long. The fur was thinner and softer below the chest. His wrists were crude and sparsely covered with hair. The palms of his hands and the soles of his feet were free of hair, but the hair on his head reached to his shoulders, partly covering his forehead. The hair on his head, moreover, felt very rough to the hand. He had no beard or mustache, though his face was completely covered with a light growth of hair. The hair around his mouth was also short and sparse. The man stood absolutely straight with his arms hanging, and his height was above the average, about 180 centimeters, about 70 inches. He stood before me like a giant, his mighty chest thrust forward. His fingers were thick, strong, and exceptionally large. On the whole, he was considerably bigger than any of the local inhabitants. His eyes told me nothing. They were dull and empty, the eyes of an animal, and he seemed to me like an animal and nothing more. As I learned, he had accepted no food or drink since he was caught. He had asked for nothing and said nothing. When kept in a warm room, he sweated profusely. While I was there, some water and then some bread were brought up to his mouth, and someone offered him a hand, but there was no reaction. I gave the verbal conclusion that this was no disguised person, but a wild man of some kind. Then I returned to my unit and never heard of him again. Since Colonel Karapetyan makes no mention of the man's odor, despite his sweating, we assume he was not a member of the smelly variety. There are many other accounts of captured Yeti types, some in great variance with the others. Professor Kaklov's 1913 report contains several of these cases. He describes, for example, how a group of herdsmen captured one of the creatures in the mountains of Iran-Keberg. This was one of the shorties, quote. Kaklov wrote, "The wild man was a male, below average height, covered with hair like a young camel. He had long arms, far below his knees, stooped with shoulders hunched forward. His chest was flat and narrow, the forehead sloping over the eyes, with prominently arched brows. Lower jaw was massive, without any chin. Nose was small, with large nostrils. The ears were large, without any lobes, pointing back. On the back of his neck was a rise. The skin on the forehead, elbows, and knees hard and tough. When he was captured, he was standing with his legs spread, slightly bent in the knees, probably taking a piss. When he was running, he was spreading his feet wide apart, awkwardly swinging his arms. The instep of the, quote, wild man resembled a human, but at least twice the size, with widely separated toes. the large toe being shorter than that of humans and widely separated from the others. The arm with long fingers was like a human arm and yet different. When the wild man, at the insistence of the herders, was allowed to go free, 2 men followed him and discovered the place where he vanished, an indentation under a hanging rock strewn with high grass. The local residents offered additional information about these creatures, that they lived in pairs, seldom seen by people, and not at all dangerous to humans. A second witness stated that for several months he observed a wild man in the regions of the river Manus, or Dam. This creature of the female sex was sometimes chained to a small mill, but was also allowed to go free. All right, so they would capture it, and they would keep it for a little while, chained up, and then they would let it go free, and then they would capture it again? What a weird pet.
Right.
The general description was the same of the male: hairy cover of skin, stooped, narrow chest, shoulders were inclined forward, long arms, bent knees, flat insteps, spread out toes resembling a paw, the contact with the ground flat without the instep. The head is described in the same fashion: absence of a chin and a rise in the back. This creature seldom issued any sounds and usually was quiet and silent. Only when approached she bared her teeth and screeched. Yeah, and then they caught her and they put a chain on her and kept her as a pet until she wanted to go free again. Good Lord. She had a peculiar way of lying down or sleeping like a camel, by squatting on the ground on its knees and elbows, resting the forehead on the ground, and resting the wrists on the back of the head. I think we put our kids in that position when they're bad.
Right?
Let's see, in the back of the head. The position accounts for the unusually hard skin of the elbows and knees, like camel soles. When offered food, the female ate only raw meat, some vegetables, and grain. She did not touch cooked meat or bread, although later she was getting used to bread. Sometimes she would catch and eat some insects. She would drink in animal fashion by lapping water, or sometimes she would dip her arms in water and lick the water. When she was allowed to go free, she ran awkwardly, swinging her arms, to the nearby reeds where she disappeared. Some of the details in these accounts will turn up again in this book and other monster reports viewed in entirely different contexts. The long fingers are common in many of the descriptions of flying saucer pilots. Which we will examine further on. Some of the hairy creatures running around the United States seem to conform to these general descriptions from Russia. So maybe we have Russian spies. They're dressed like Chewbacca running around in the woods.
Maybe.
Ivan Sanderson's book, Abominable Snowmen, Legend Come to Life, is over 500 pages long and carefully presents all sides of the question. Obviously, we cannot even begin to reduce such a complicated subject to a few pages here. Sanderson has attempted to catalog all of the known abominable snowman lore from many scattered geographical locations. After many years of investigation and study, he concludes, I think there are at least 3 main types of ultra-primitive men, and or submen, and or subhominids, still alive today. These, I would say, are, first, sundry pygmy types of very near human or completely human composition. Second, some remaining Neanderthaler types in eastern Eurasia. And third, some very primitive and large creatures almost absolutely without any, quote, culture in any sense of that term. In northwestern North and Central America, perhaps in South America, the eastern Sino-Tibetan uplands, and in Indochina. Then I'm even more sure there still remains something else. And then the author says, we agree, there still remains something else. So that was chapter 8 from The Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings. Is everyone liking the show so far? You can see I didn't really plan this out as well as I could have. But I'm thankful I have 102 subscribers as of right now. Unless I picked up 1 or 2 more. But as of yesterday, I had 102 subscribers. And I'm real for everybody that's on here that's subscribed. Thank you very much. I know I've only got a couple of you here. Let's see. Should I go ahead with another chapter? Or does anybody have anything in particular? Maybe they've seen a Bigfoot. Maybe they want to discuss some of what their favorite cryptids are. We're not limited here. There are no rules. So anybody. Real interesting, everybody. Let's see. Let me check my Twitter. Well, we got somebody on Twitter. Let's see, in the crowd.
Keep talking.
Keep
talking.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead. That one was about Russian Bigfoots. What is that? Scoliophis atlanticus. That sounds waterborne. All right. Unidentified swimming objects. I'll tell you a little something. When I was in the Navy, the weirdest thing I saw in the water, we were doing an underway replenishment. It's where they bring the oil tanker comes beside our ship, and we have teams together, and we pull the hoses over to refuel our ship at sea. And I was the team leader on my line, and so we got the ships all hooked up, and me and another guy we're looking over the side between the two ships, and we saw something come up, and it could have been a whale, but it seemed like it was way too. It wasn't like any whale I'd ever seen. I guess it could have been sperm whales. It seemed like too small for that kind of thing.
Blue whales are big.
Blue
whales are the biggest whale in the ocean.
It didn't look like a blue whale, I'll tell you that. It was all, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It was huge, though. It seemed bigger than any whale I'd ever seen. And it came up right in between the two ships. And I guess anybody else might mistake it for because all the water's all rough and stuff between the two ships. But this thing was huge. It came right, all we could see was the back. And it was me and another guy that saw it. And I looked down, I saw its back come out and then go back down. I was like, what the heck was that? And I happened to look, I turned to the other guy, and the other guy had the same expression on his face I did. He just kind of looked at me and I was like, what the hell?
Never know.
You never know. I'll tell you what, I don't know. I doubt that there's any kind of, plesiosaur lake monsters, or what's the other one? The one that Patrick likes.
Elasmosaurus.
The what?
Elasmosaurus.
Elasmosaurus is the other one that kind of looks like that. I don't know if there's anything like that in Loch Ness or whatever, but I'd be willing to bet that there's at least a possibility that something like that might possibly be still in the ocean. So let's see. We'll pick something out. Let's see. This is chapter 20. The whole point was that if I had guests.
That's fine.
Because I was going to ask them. Oh, I got 103 subscribers. I'm just looking.
Woohoo!
Oh, it's probably you.
No.
You didn't subscribe? You're not subscribed to me?
I subscribed to you a couple weeks ago.
Oh, all right. I thought for a second I thought my own wife didn't subscribe to me. All right, so let's see. Unidentified swimming objects. Let's see. That looks interesting. All right, so now we're going to jump to chapter 20 in this book. We'll try to cover different kinds of cryptids. So we're jumping on chapter 20. This is unidentified swimming objects. Let's see. Something is going on at the bottom of the oceans, and even in placid lakes and streams all over the world. Strange objects and creatures frequently have been observed on top of the water and deep within it. The United States government has been taking these sightings far more seriously than the now routine flying saucer appearances in our skies. In January 1969, the Navy revealed the existence of a top-secret nuclear submarine called the NR-1. It costs nearly $100 million and carries a crew of 7. $100 million carries only 7 people? That seems like a huge waste of money.
It does.
Let's see. I was in the Navy and I never heard of the NR-7. And it was my job to kind of know American submarines.
Never. Let's look it up.
I'm sorry, the NR-1.
NR1.
NR-1.
NR-1.
We got the researcher on it.
Let's see. It is an American submarine. It is a nuclear-powered ocean engineering and research submarine built by Electric Boat Division of General Dynamics at Groton. It was launched in January of 1969.
Are they still in service?
Let's see.
Excuse me. We'll get back to you guys on that. She's going to look that up. I know when we were, it's not something we looked for. Of course, being that small, I don't know.
It was used in 95 by Dr. Ballard when he was looking for the Titanic.
Oh, so it's basically research submarine.
It was used in 2007 for a Flower Gardens Banks National Marine Sanctuary and other sites in the Gulf of Mexico.
So it's a research submarine.
It was deactivated in 2008.
I got out in 2006. Yeah, it's not something we would look for. We weren't really looking for...
It was defueled in Kittery.
It was what?
Defueled in Kittery.
Oh, I was stationed in Kittery. When?
2008.
Oh, I wasn't there at the time. I left Kittery in 2006.
And scrapped at Puget Sound in 2013.
Well, all right. So being a small submarine.
It was small.
Excuse me.
That
wasn't something we really looked for. We looked for kind of,
It was a research vessel.
Yeah, it's a research submarine. So that really wasn't on our, it wasn't our bailiwick. I was a sonar technician. And we looked for, combat submarines and stuff. All right. So let's get back to this. Let's see. Navy revealed the existence of a top secret nuclear submarine called the NR-1. How big was it?
I don't know.
It was a nuclear submarine?
It was a nuclear submarine, yes, sir.
Good Lord.
400 tons, 45 feet.
That's as big as my ship was.
45 meters length overall, 3.8 meters in the beam, and 4.6 meter draft.
Good Lord. All right. Let's see. A conventional nuclear submarine carries a crew of over 100. Why do we need a 7-man submarine worth $100 million? That's my question. But even if they were doing research, $100 million, a lot of that goes into the nuclear power plant, though. If it's a nuclear submarine, those things aren't cheap. It's not like you can go to the junkyard and get yourself a used nuclear plant. Let's see. The Navy says to explore commercial and military possibilities of the ocean floor. They were doing research. All right. The NR-1 is equipped with a vast array of underwater lights, televisions, and motion picture cameras, and numerous other space-age gadgets, including mechanical arms. The sub can operate at depths down to 2,000 feet. Originally, it was supposed to cost a mere $30 million. But like anything else the military does, they go way over budget. But it turned out that the sub itself finally cost $67.5 million to build. Another $11.8 million went to research and development, in quotes. And those TV cameras and mechanical arms ran night. Why wouldn't those numbers be added in with the original build? And those TV cameras and mechanical arms ran $19.9 million. Expensive TV cameras. Then the whole project was classified top secret, and we can only assume that 7 men are riding around in it somewhere out there, probing the ocean's bottom and photographing the strange creatures which live there until 2008, when we know they scuttled it. Let's see. Numerous oceanographic expeditions that have picked up perplexing underwater anomalies on their instruments throughout the 1960s. Glistening metallic objects larger than any known submarines have surfaced off the coast of Australia and South America, inspiring extensive, fruitless military searches by sea and air. Some of the underwater objects intercepted by sonar were traveling at impossible speeds, too fast for any known fish or man-made submarine. So this is all UFOs in the water. Let's see. We know more about the moon than we do about the Atlantic Ocean. All right, this is talking about UFOs in the water. We want some animals. UFOs are not cryptids. Does anybody think UFOs are cryptids? Because I don't think so.
No, UFOs are their own special category.
Yeah,
thing.
UFOs are their own deal. Let's see. What is Scoliophus atlanticus? Let's see. This is chapter 21, Scoliophus atlanticus. A large group of students from Hong Kong University were on the beach late one night in March 1969 when they heard a crying noise, in quotes. Benjamin Chai said, I looked out to the sea, and about 20 yards from us, a big black creature was rising from the water. There we go. Now we're into the cryptids. I yelled out, Kai Kwai, sea devil, and all the others saw it too. Whatever it was black, 20 to 30 feet long, and had big green eyes. It wailed something like a baby crying and sank again into the water after about 30 seconds. It was fantastic, Lulu Chow said. Good Lord, Lulu Chow. It had a big head and it wasn't a fish, that's all I can say. The same month, fishermen on City Island Bridge in the Bronx, New York, many thousands of miles from Hong Kong, were gaping in disbelief at a huge, slimy, black and gray creature swimming unconcernedly upriver past one of the largest cities in the world. The witnesses said that it was much bigger than a whale. Soon afterwards, people from Little Neck Bay, Queens, reported seeing the thing. Harbor police dashed off on a futile serpent chase, according to Bronx News Journal. Ever since man learned to sail, he has been seeing sea monsters and ocean-going unbelievables. The earliest maps were covered with drawings of grotesque reptiles and notations asserting, here there be monsters. Whole crews of ships have seen the creatures, and marine journals going back 200 years are filled with carefully recorded reports giving full descriptions of the beasts, the exact latitudes and longitudes they were sighted, and other pertinent details. 5 or 10 new sea serpents sightings turned up in the daily press every year. Hmm? All right. Oh, where was I? Still, excuse me.
Take a chapter for another night.
Hold on. Oh, sorry. Still, science treats sea serpents as humorous myths. And when the carcass of one washes up on a beach, and many have, the Type B scientists soberly offered explanations that border on insanity. UFOs are meteors, abominable snowmen are fugitives from the zoo, and sea serpents are elephants, according to our learned men of science. Our learned men of science are trying to hide sea serpents from you. Write down that I'm reading from a book. Let's see. Dr. Bernard Hovelmans, one of the few scientists to make a serious study of sea serpents, has speculated that there may actually exist at least 7 different types of unclassified sea monsters. With his usual wry British style, Ivan T. Sanderson has labeled one group of beached behemoths globsters. They are, indeed, grotesque globs of something. Some of the earlier sea serpent sightings could very well have disappointing explanations. Giant squid could supply the answer to a few cases. These enormous, multi-tentacled creatures have been known to attack small boats from time to time. In the 1920s, some filmmakers operating in a diving bell off the coast of Bermuda were attacked by one of these things. It was so big that it actually picked up the heavy driving bell and shook it until the cameraman inside was knocked unconscious. He rang his bell.
Who rang his bell?
I'm picturing this big huge bell.
That's awesome.
And the cameraman's inside this bell and the thing picks it up and rings it. Like he's doing Christmas songs. Let's see. Science regarded the giant squid as a legend of the sea until around 1880. but drawings of the creature can be found on ancient Greek urns and the old Japanese woodcuts. The squid has huge cigar-shaped body with eyes as big as saucers, a beak like a parrot, and 10 tentacles lined with suction cups. 2 of the arms being somewhat longer than the others, it would be very unpleasant to meet one while taking a moonlight dip. Those tentacles can grow as long as 50 feet, and if submerged, squid chose to flutter 1 or 2 above the surface, you might think you were seeing a serpent of some kind. One of these squid apparently attacked a ship captained by Jean-Magus Dens back in the 1730s. In his report, Captain Dens said that a monster, quote, a monster so horrible as to defy description, grabbed 3 of his men in its frightening tentacles. The crew fought it off with harpoons, and it finally released its victims and dropped back into the sea. Why didn't it drag them down with it?
Wasn't hungry?
Like, ow! Ow! Stop poking me with those things! Oh, fine, fine. Drops them on the ship or drops them in the water and then goes away instead of taking the ones it's already got in its hands down into the water with it. Does that make any sense to you?
No, but maybe he'd already had his fill of humans that day.
Well, even if he'd already had his fill of humans, why was he attacking them then? Just for fun of it?
Well, yeah, why not? See if you can sink a boat.
All right, we're going to have this discussion later about these sea monsters. My wife has a degree in marine biology, and so she's going to explain to me in a little bit why there can't be sea monsters in the ocean that we've never heard of.
I am in no way going to do that.
All right. One of these squid apparently attacked a ship captained by Jean-Magus Dens. I've already read that part, didn't I?
I don't know. I wasn't listening.
Dropped back into the sea. Yeah, it let go of the guys because it wasn't hungry anymore, and it dropped back into the sea. Sea serpents became a vogue in the 19th century, and many spurious reports are widely published. Others were seemingly very legitimate. One of the classics is the sighting made by the crew of the HMS Daedalus, a 19-gun corvette commanded by Captain Peter. Good Lord, what is his name? Peter McQuahay.
The language
His
is
name
difficult.
is Peter M apostrophe Quahe. What language is that? That's not French, is it?
The ship is Daedalus?
HMS Daedalus. That's a British. Her Majesty's ship, right?
HMS is British, yes.
So I don't. Maybe
Right,
I'd never heard.
Up the HMS Daedalus. How's that sound?
Okay. While in the South Atlantic, something 60 feet or longer appeared 300 feet from the ship, rapidly swimming in the other direction. Its head, which resembled that of a snake, jutted about 4 feet out of the water. On December 4th, 1893, the steamer Umfuli encountered and chased a sea serpent. It was a calm, sunny day, and the Umfuli was sailing about 30 miles off the coast of West Africa when the thing surfaced suddenly 400 yards to the starboard. 3 massive bumps were visible in the water, and the creature's head and neck were about 15 feet above the surface. Captain Kringle.
Now are we talking Santa Claus?
His name was Captain Kringle. So Captain Kringle saw a sea serpent. All right. Captain Kringle ordered his helmsman to turn and try to follow the creature. He chased it for 20 minutes at a speed of 14 knots, and the thing outran him. Kringle filed a detailed report, and the press had a field day with it. Years later, in 1929, Captain Kringle told Captain Rupert Gould, a pioneer monster hunter. Who's a pioneer? Who the hell wrote this book? John A. Keel. He was a. Did that go on his resume? He was a pioneer monster hunter.
How do you spell Captain Kringle?
With a C.
All right.
Let's see. I've been so ridiculed about the thing that I've many times wished that someone else had seen that sea monster rather than me. I've been told that it was a string of porpoises, that it was an island of seaweed, and I don't know what else besides. But if an island can travel at the rate of 14 knots Or if a string of porpoises can stand 15 feet out of the water, then I give in.
I can't find anything on Captain Kringle.
No
There's
Captain.
a book.
Let's see. Does it say the name? Let's see. Captain Kringle. The Umfuli. UMFULI.
The UMFUI.
No. UMFULI.
LI.
Yeah.
Q.
That's the name. He was a steamer ship. He was a date.
Strange Encounter.
There you go.
1893?
1893, yes. December 4th. All right. And I don't know what else besides, but if an island can travel at the rate of 14, let's see. The squid can travel very fast underwater using a kind of jet propulsion, spewing out streams of water. But when it is moving, its body goes first, and its long tentacles follow. They would not stick out of the water and then resemble a serpent's head. It is also believed that the serpents sighted are really the oarfish or eels. The oarfish is a long, serpentine thing and is rarely caught. It swims like a fish, however, and in no way duplicates the often observed undulating motion of sea serpents. Oh, it swims because it is a fish, right? An oarfish?
Oarfish, yes. It looks like an eel, kind of.
It's just a funny shaped fish.
Yeah. It's very big, though. They get like crazy long. I think 10 feet. I can't remember.
Let's see. In no way duplicates the often observed undulating motions of sea serpents. Eels, on the other hand, come in a wide variety of sizes. Some of them are minor incomprehensibles. At least one type could be the source of a few sea serpent stories.
I was wrong. Oarfish are 36 feet in length.
36 feet. Wow, that's big.
They're very big.
Is it one of those deep sea things?
No, they're seen at the surface fairly frequently.
Oh, wow.
That's only.
We're looking at a
feet.
picture here, and there's about like 30 guys holding one.
Yeah.
All right.
Washed up on the shore of San Diego in 96.
Let's see. Something estimated to measure between 60 and 140 feet long put in an appearance off the coast of Gloucester, Massachusetts in the summer of 1817. Mr. Amos Story said he saw it at noon on Sunday, August 10th, 1817, and watched it swim about for an hour. It had a turtle-like head, in quotes, and was as big around as a man. He estimated that it sometimes moved as fast as 30 miles an hour. Other people around Gloucester allegedly saw the thing during the next 2 weeks. Finally, according to Bert Gross' account in Fate, May 1969, I assume that's some kind of publication, a baby sea serpent was found, killed, and exhibited in the Essex Coffee House in Gloucester.
Well, apparently we should be in Gloucester for these sea stories.
Gloucester in Massachusetts?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, Gloucester. I just read that part. Gloucester, Massachusetts.
Yes, you did.
Well, they don't really post giant sea monsters in like Starbucks anymore.
No.
Although, like, their symbol was it like
a mermaid with their tail split?
There should be more giant taxidermied sea monsters in Starbucks.
Yes.
Let's see. It was 3 feet long, brown, and had 32 humps on its back. It was named Scoliophis atlanticus, the flexible snake of the Atlantic. Let's see. If the Scoliophis atlanticus had been discovered in a later, more sophisticated period, the whole sea serpent controversy might have been resolved once and for all. But in 1817, science was not even ready to accept the existence of the giant squid, and there were no scientists to scurry to Gloucester and examine the 3-foot, multi-humped baby sea serpent.
Aww.
It's like a sea camel.
I want to see a sea serpent.
In 1930, the nets about the research ship Dana reeled in another incomprehensible. The Dana was only a few miles from the spot in the South Atlantic where the Daedalus had sighted a sea monster nearly a century before. Dr. Anton Brunn was somewhat amazed by the 6-foot-long thing in its net. He dissected and studied it carefully, and his amazement grew. The thing was a larva. It was 6 feet long in the larva stage and it was capable of growing up to 100 or even 180 feet long. From this study of the creature's structure, Broom concluded that it was some kind of giant eel. What kind of sea life has a larval stage?
Most fishes, actually. Not mammalian, but...
How would you determine if an animal was 6 feet long that it was in the larval stage? What kind of characteristics would it have?
Oh, the larval stage depends upon each species of fish, and
They thought it was some kind of eel.
yeah, I don't really know my larval stages, but you would look for like bony teeth or something like that. Larval stages generally, from what I remember, don't have a lot of bony structure.
Okay, so if it doesn't have any... Now...
I could be entirely wrong. I don't remember a lot of that.
Okay. We're going to have to hire a new researcher here, everybody. Let's see. I married her because she was going into... because she had a degree in marine biology, or she was getting her degree. I thought she'd be more useful during live streams in the future.
It's been 10 years since I've done any of that work.
All right. Let's see. Where was I?
6 foot long larva.
Oh, some kind of giant eel. Okay, I found it. The conger eel can grow up to 10 feet long, and the record moray eel was 16 feet long. But their larvae are only 3 or 4 inches in length. A larva 6 feet long could grow to 30 times that length. Dr. Broom was convinced that he had solved the sea serpent mystery, but his larva was anomalous. Later expeditions to the same spot failed to find duplicates. In his book, The Mystery Monsters, Gardner Soule quoted Broom as saying, "If the monstrous larva exists, the monstrous adults must exist too. As terrifying as any sea serpent ever painted, I shall search for them again, and someday they will be found. I am a man who rather believes in sea serpents. He is also a man who will fight for your honor and will be your hero that you're dreaming of." On June 11th, 1930, Dr. William Beebe was 550 feet down in the Atlantic in his famous bathysphere when he also saw some kind of giant larva. A big leptocephalus undulated pass, he wrote. What is leptocephalus?
I don't know, but
God,
I mean,
Lord.
if we're talking deep sea creatures, God knows what could be down there. Because
What's
the
cephalus?
deep sea,
Cephalus is head, right?
yeah.
What's lepto?
I don't know, but I mean, if we're talking deep sea creatures, who
So
knows
this just means
what could
big
be?
head. Big leptocephalus undulated pass, he wrote later. He was at 550 feet down. Maybe we should get Patrick in here. Didn't he do a report on that?
Leptocephalus, slim head.
Oh, slim head. I got that exactly opposite.
But I mean, deep sea creatures, because they live under extreme pressure, have very strange modifications.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be unbelievable at the surface, down in the ocean, in the deep, is mind-bogglingly possible.
All right. Undulated pass, he wrote later. A pale ribbon of transparent gelatin with only the 2 iridescent eyes to indicate its arrival. As it moved, I could see the outline faintly, 10 inches long at least, and as it passed close, even the parted jaws were visible. This was the larva of some great sea eel. Now, I'm looking at a picture of a leptocephalus now, and it looks like a ghost eel. Like it's totally clear, and you can see its like outline in white. If you're looking out the window of a submarine and you saw one of those, would you just assume that was a larval animal? Would you be able, looking through the window of a submarine, would you be able to tell the kind of traits that would make something a larva?
Well, if you're in a submarine going in the deep, you would be familiar with this because that would be your life study. That would be what you spend all your time doing.
All right, let's see. This was 1930, so maybe. I'm going to put that up, chalk that up as a big maybe. Let's see. In July 1963, a transparent submersible had the gall to appear directly off the east coast of the United States, just south of New York City. It had the further effrontery to swim past the research ship Challenger, loaded down with scientists. One of them, Dr. Lionel A. Walford of the Sandy Hook Marine Laboratories, described it this way. It resembled a transparent sea monster. It looked like so much jelly. I could see no bones and no eyes, nose, or mouth. But there it was, undulating along, looking as if it were almost made of fluid glass. It was from 40 to 50 feet long and 5 to 7 inches in diameter. This was 1963. Does that sound like something you've heard of? No bones, no eyes, nose, or mouth. It was undulating.
That would have to be a deep sea creature that got somehow up to the surface.
It sounds like something out of...
Or it could be a... some jellyfish do like a... not necessarily larval, but like egg sacs. These big, undulous, blobous jelly sacs that are practically transparent.
So it'd be like an egg sac?
Gigantic, yeah.
And do they move around on their own? Like maybe because
they move around in currents.
Oh, okay. Or maybe it was some kind of Lovecraftian monster.
Entirely possible.
All right. The same thing was seen a short time later off the coast of Asbury Park, New Jersey. If it was a larva, we had rather not meet it after it grows up. Hairy things with unbelievably tough hides, several times larger than the largest known whale, with tusks sometimes as long as 20 feet, wash up on beaches. Crowds gather to mutter in confusion, and then Type B scientists. What does he classify as a Type B scientist?
I don't know.
Type B scientists are any scientists that don't believe in monsters. Mm-hmm. I think that seems to be the qualification. And then Type B scientists resolve the mystery by calling them whales anyway. Another explanation in vogue is to say that they are the remains of elephants or even ancient mammoths which have recently been freed from floating icebergs. What?
Are we talking about the same mass as before? Or is that
no, this is a separate thing.
Oh, okay.
This is a completely separate subject, apparently. Let me read that again. Hairy things with unbelievably tough hides, several times larger than the largest known whale, with tusks sometimes as long as 20 feet, wash up on beaches. I've never heard of a mammoth washing up on a beach.
No, never have I.
Let's see.
We never covered that in any of my coursework either.
And I know they find them, like in Africa, or not Africa, in
Siberia.
Alaska, Siberia, places like that.
Yeah.
I've never heard them washing up on a beach, though.
No, never.
Let's see. Another explanation in vogue is to say that they are remains of elephants or even ancient mammoths, which have recently been freed from floating icebergs. The, quote, iceberg hypothesis is not merely unscientific, it is moronic. So far as is known, no animal, modern or prehistoric, has ever been found encased in a floating iceberg. Yes, but it's not unheard of, I guess, that such a thing could happen. You know, it's conceivable, right?
Yes, it is conceivable.
It's conceivable that maybe, you know...
But maybe most people recognize an elephant shape as opposed to a sea creature shape.
Yeah, I would think that once the thing hit land, they could look at the skull and say, yeah, that's an elephant skull.
Froze my device.
Let's see.
Oh, it's not. I froze it myself.
So that's not... All right. It says here, the iceberg hypothesis is not merely unscientific. It's not unscientific. As a matter of fact, if you look at like all the corpses they found of mastodons and mammoths and stuff, they're all kind of flash frozen, I guess. They were frozen quickly. Some of them still had food in their mouths. So I don't see how it's unscientific to think that one of these things was frozen on a glacier and somehow broke free and floated in the water. I don't know. That doesn't sound unscientific to me. Although I still have never heard of a mammoth, washing up on a beach. Let's see. So far as is known, no animal, modern or prehistoric, has ever been found encased in a floating iceberg. If it were even remotely possible for an ancient beast to emerge from a melting iceberg, it would certainly drift ashore in northern climes. But our hairy beasts have a habit of turning up on beaches in Florida and Mexico, many thousands of miles south of the iceberg belt. Good Lord, there are not mammoths washing on shore in Mexico. That has never happened in the history of the world.
Well, let's wiki this, all right? Hairy beasts washing up on Florida coast. Look at that.
Did something
There
pop
are
up?
pictures of hairy beasts washing up on Florida coasts.
What is it? Does it look like a mastodon?
Well, hold on. Let's pick up some pictures. They look quite
What the
gross and
heck?
blubberous.
You know what it looks like? Oh, I know what that is. What's that thing that the airbender flew on?
Appa.
What do they call them? Air buffalo?
Some of these images are clearly decomposing whales.
I don't know.
Are they hairy decomposing whales?
Well, I mean,
What's the hairiest thing that swims on a
A
regular
dog?
basis?
the dog.
No, those look too big to be dogs. We have two big dogs, and they're not that big. That is clearly some form of whale. But look at the teeth.
Well, no, that's an oarfish or something similar to that.
It's the weird mouth thing. It's like a giant mouth, tiny tail.
Yeah.
We need to do research on this more.
I wonder if that. I can imagine that. We're looking at a. So we're on Google image search, and there's a dude in a cowboy hat with his shirt off and a hairy chest. And I can imagine probably some of those washed ashore in Florida and
People
probably
ran away
Texas and
screaming.
Mexico. So, okay, I'll go along with that. I don't think that defroze out of an iceberg, though.
No. A lot of these are whales. You can clearly tell they're decomposing whale carcasses.
All right. Where was I? Let's see. Iceberg, Florida. If it were even remotely possible for an ancient beast to emerge from a melting iceberg, it would certainly drift ashore. Let's see.
You're past that.
Florida and Mexico. Perhaps this pseudo-scientific myth springs from the fact this whole book is pseudo-scientific myths.
Yes.
Perhaps this pseudo-scientific myth springs from the fact that some prehistoric saber-toothed tigers and mammoths were found frozen in muck in northern Siberia around the turn of the century. Muck is frozen soil completely unrelated to iceberg. Apparently, those animals were caught in landslides or some other catastrophe, and their bodies were quick frozen. I'm just kind of giggling that these saber-toothed tigers were caught in a catastrophe. And flash froze. All right, one theory is that the Earth shifted suddenly on its axis long ago, with tropical areas suddenly ending up in the northern latitudes. We've located only one story about a frozen monster in more recent times. In 1930, a skeleton and a pile of flesh were allegedly discovered on Glacier Island, Alaska. The creature was 24 feet long and covered with hair or fur. Its head, let's see. The creature is 24 feet long, covered with hair and fur. Its head was 59 inches long, and it had a 39-inch snout. No long-snouted 24-foot furry incomprehensible is known to paleontologists. To paleontology. Not that this means very much. There are several types of bedbugs that have never been classified and cataloged either. That's
As of that writing, he's right. Probably as of that writing, he's right.
Yeah, the last revision on this was 2002.
Yeah, so it's way out of date.
So yeah, this book is kind of out of date. Let's see. I think since 2002, they found a Tyrannosaurus skeleton, didn't they? That still had blood that still had
I remember something vaguely about that. Yes.
yeah, it had blood cells or something in the bones.
Yeah.
Let's see, where was I? I keep losing my place. In September 1808, something with 6 arms and paws or wings washed up on a beach in the Orkney Islands. You think it was an oarfish?
All right. Describe this creature.
September 1808, something with 6 arms and paws or wings washed up on a beach in the Orkney Islands. It seems unlikely in 1808 that they would have had a picture of it.
Oh.
But maybe they'll have like a wood carving.
Yeah.
On the Orkney Islands. One, Dr. Barclay, observed it and announced that it was without the least resemblance or affinity to fish. When it turned rancid, it was hauled out to sea again. So science wasn't big on cataloging animals back then, were they?
No.
Because I would think if, like, hey, scientists.
This is the drawing they have of it. It looks like a plesiosaur with paws.
Yeah, it looks like a 6-legged plesiosaur.
Yeah.
With a little sketch.
It's a little hand sketch.
Looks like something Zach drew. Let's see. Without the least resemblance or affinity to fish. When it turned rancid, it was hauled out to sea again. All right. 12 miles south of St. Augustine, Florida, a massive pink thing floated ashore on December 1st, 1896. Professor A.E. Verrill looked it over. It was 21 feet long, 7 feet wide, and 4.5 feet high. He reported and weighed an estimated 7 tons. It did not appear to be the remains of an octopus or a whale. The hide is of a light pink color, nearly white, said the New York Herald, December 2nd, 1896. And in the sunshine has a distinct silvery appearance. I know what it was.
Mm.
It was a luck dragon.
Yes.
A luck dragon washed ashore. What are you looking at?
It was the bottom of that page. I was scrolling to the end. Not my fault it had girly pics at the bottom.
Let's see. It did not appear to be remains of an octopus. Let's see. Carol is very tough and cannot be penetrated with a sharp knife. Yeah, it can't be a luck dragon because they stuck that thing with the needle. Just that little gnome.
Yeah, they did. And he wasn't happy about that at all.
No.
But he wasn't really pink. He was more pearlescent.
Yeah, but he did kind of have a shiny.
It was
a little white and pink. In a book called Battles with Giant Fish, F.A. Mitchell Hedges described a huge something that washed up on a beach in Cape May, New Jersey in November 1921. It was supposed to have weighed an estimated 15 tons and was large as 5 fully grown elephants. The late Charles Fort took an interest in this one and tried to collect more information. He did manage to locate some photographs of the thing. It had 2 6-foot-long tusks. Oh, that one might have pictures.
All right, so
let's see.
give me a description and we'll see if we can find some pictures.
All right, November 1921 in Cape May, New Jersey. Just put in that date, see if anything comes up.
1921.
Let's see.
Cape May, New Jersey.
Let's see. F.A. Mitchell Hedges.
Cryptozoology online.
There you go. So the Cape May monster looks like a shark. It's like a basking shark.
Yes, I was just gonna say it's probably a basking shark with all the fleshy parts washed away.
So that's what it looked like without it looked like that?
Yes. The picture shows just a gray outline with the bony remains or cartilaginous remains, of the fish.
All right. So
but when you fill in with flesh, it greatly resembles a basking shark.
All right. So it looks to me right off the bat like a basking shark. But that's not. They should have photographs though.
Well,
there it is.
It's
not a very good photograph.
It's the Cape May globster of 1921.
All right, and that was what year?
1921.
Oh yeah, okay, that's right. All right. On October 24th, 1924, another incomprehensible, which is his word for cryptid, floated onto a beach in Natal, Africa. It was 47 feet long. And it was covered in white hair like a polar bear. So it wasn't a polar bear. Oh, we got somebody. We caught one. Hey, Natsu. What do you think? You like our little stories? We're kind of roasting this this Mysterious Beings book. We're having a little fun tonight.
Uh-oh.
What?
I hit a button.
All right. Let's see. We're going to read a little more from this book. I hope you're enjoying it. We're having fun roasting it.
Patrick, read, sir. Read.
All right.
Read.
I didn't recognize the name. Okay, let's see. Doing.
Our son is doing a weird little dance in the room.
All right. Let's see. Tasmania has given us a number of interesting animal oddities.
I thought
As
we
we
were
have-
doing sea creatures.
Well, this is still the last thing they thought it was a polar bear, or it had hair like a polar bear.
Well, that's
This is-
probably the decomposing carcass of a baleen whale because their bellies are striped and they kind of look hairy when they break up.
Well, that would make sense, I guess. Tasmania has given us a number of interesting animal oddities, as we have already noted. On April 20th, 1913, two miners named David and Harris reported seeing a very strange creature near Macquarie Harbor. It may have been some kind of sea-going amphibian. Are there any ocean amphibians?
I have never heard of one, and I don't remember hearing anything about that in my studies.
I would imagine that would stand out, because
Well,
I've never heard. I'm not a scientist.
amphibians breathe through their skin. And ocean water isn't really conducive to keeping your body chemistry normal. Even regular bony fish have to work to keep their body chemistry on par with what it needs to be for life.
But even any of the ancient ocean-going dinosaur-like animals, none of them were amphibians, were they?
Yeah, I just typed in Google for ocean amphibians and nothing comes up.
All right.
It's showing just bony fishes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd heard of anything like that.
It's just, it's not possible. The ocean does not lend itself to amphibians because the salt
The salt would
would
dry off the skin
invade
and
and,
stuff.
well, it would invade their body and they'd have no way to regulate.
All right. The animal was about 15 feet long, they said. It had a very small head, only the size of the head of a kangaroo dog. What the heck is a kangaroo dog?
I've never heard of a kangaroo dog.
Let's see. It had a thick, arched neck, passing gradually into the barrel of the body. It had no definite tail and no fins. It was furred.
A kangaroo dog is a breed of dog bred in Australia as a sight hound.
Oh, that's awfully specific.
It's
I would have said
bred
like small dog. And maybe they're real common there.
It's a sight hound. That's all it says.
Is it half kangaroo?
Well, I imagine they would use it to hunt kangaroo, right?
But it's not half kangaroo.
No, probably not.
Let's see. Yeah, that's awful. I don't know. Maybe they were real common then.
It is considered a type of dog rather than a purebred.
Oh, so it's like a fighting dog or a hound dog or
Yeah.
a general hunting dog.
Yes. Obviously from Australia, so.
All right. Well, yeah. Let's see. It had a thick arched neck. Well, that's why I guess you would use it. It sounds like it would be specific, but if it's just a kind of dog as
It's
opposed
just
to
a
a
kind of
breed,
dog.
then
Yeah.
you would think, oh, that common kind of dog. That's what it looked like.
Yep.
All right. It had a thick arched neck passing gradually into the barrel of the body. It had no definite tail and no fins. Did it have feet?
What are we reading again?
This is about we're still on the seagoing amphibian.
Oh, okay.
No tail and no fins.
Well, how would it get along? If it's an amphibian, it's got to have some way to get out of the water,
Especially if
right?
it doesn't have a tail.
No tail, no
But it was
fins.
furry.
Amphibians aren't furry.
It says here that it had fur.
Amphibians are not furry. Amphibians, by their very nature, are...
Are you sure?
Every amphibian I know has no fur. Name me one that's furry.
Platypus.
That's not an amphibian.
It lays eggs.
Not an amphibian.
It has a bill.
That's a duck, then.
Let's see. It was furred. The coat in appearance resembling that of a horse or of chestnut color, well groomed and shining. It had 4 distinct legs. It traveled by bounding. Sounds like a seal.
It sounds very much like a seal, not an amphibian.
Let's see. The coat in appearance resembling that of a horse or chestnut color, well groomed and shining. It had 4 distinct legs. Okay, so it does have legs. It traveled by bounding, i.e., by arching its back, gathering up its body so that the footprints of the forefeet were level with those of the hind feet.
That sounds like the way a seal moves.
So basically, it would get up on its front feet and then arch its back and pull its back feet in front,
To the
so
front.
that you would have 4 footprints in a row, like in a single file. Not single file, but sideways in a row, because its back prints
Would go between its front
would go
prints.
between its front prints.
That's the way a kangaroo moves.
But kangaroos have tails, and they're
When
not.
a kangaroo walks, well, no, but I'm telling you, when a kangaroo walks, they put their back feet between their front feet.
Kangaroos are not amphibians, Ange.
I'm just telling you how kangaroos walk. We saw in the summer.
Let's see. Let's see. Well groomed and shining. It had 4 distinct legs, bounding. Well, I would think if these people are in Tasmania, they'd seen a kangaroo before.
You would think.
And kangaroos have tails. Maybe it was a tailless kangaroo.
I'm still stuck on the furry amphibian.
Yeah. It says it looked like a seagoing amphibian, and then describes a kangaroo without a tail, or a seal.
Or a seal.
These guys had never seen these animals before.
Apparently not. What year was this?
1913.
Maybe they were stuck in the bottom of the ship when they were transported to Australia.
Maybe they were Tasmanian hill folk. Let's see. Gathering its body. Let's see. Keep getting distracted.
Sorry.
All right. These showed circular impressions with a diameter of 9 inches and the marks of claws about 7 inches long, extending outward from the body. There was no evidence for or against webbing, so they couldn't tell by its footprints if it had webbed feet. Perhaps if the same animal were swimming and using the same bounding movements, it would resemble the classic sea serpent. Maybe Davies and Harris saw a sea serpent on shore leave.
Why would it undulate in the water, though? Because that movement on land is not nearly as efficient as movement on water. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm getting confused.
I'm trying to think. That makes no sense. I don't know what the heck it's like they're describing an inchworm.
Well, yeah, but if you put an inchworm in water, it's not going to move the same way it would move on land.
Well, if it doesn't know how to swim, it's just going to move however it moves, right?
Well, right, but the point I'm saying is this is a sea creature. They're saying, come on land. Well, the way a creature moves on land is different than a creature swims. Because if you look at a seal, they're ungainly as hell on land, but in the water, they're sleek and smooth and no problem. So why would it move the same in both locations is the part I'm kind of having issues with.
Yes, I kind of agree with that. Let's see. All right. Perhaps if the same animal were swimming and using the same bounding movements, it would resemble the classics. Oh, good Lord. Yeah.
You keep getting the same spots over and over again.
Anomalous sea creatures are constantly being caught, reported upon briefly, and then completely forgotten. A Mexican shrimp boat, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this correctly, Xochitl Elena came upon a floundering thing in the Gulf of Mexico in May 1954. Long, heavy harpoons bounded off of its tough hide, but finally the crew managed to spear it and haul it aboard. It was 4 feet long, 6 feet wide, and had long, sharp teeth and stubby fins, tipping the scales at 550 pounds. It remains unidentified. One Joseph Korhummel was walking along the shore near Redwood, California in July 1955 when he saw something splashing about just offshore. He climbed onto some rocks for a better look and saw what he described as a snake-like creature 16 to 18 feet long. It had brownish green. It was brownish green, had a fin just behind its head, and was at least a foot in diameter.
Sounds like an oarfish.
A few months later, in December 1955, an 800-pound snake-like thing washed ashore at Venice, California. It was 16 feet long and 14 inches in diameter, and came complete with fins and a snakish head. Over in Girvan, Scotland, a hairy, 30-foot-long incomprehensible washed up in September 1953. This one had a 10-foot giraffe-like neck, 4 short legs, a pointed tail 12 feet long, and a coat of heavy dark brown hair. The official scientific opinion, sight unseen, was that it was a shark. That sounds like every shark I've ever seen.
Well, no, but when things are in the ocean decomposing for a while, different things happen.
Hold on. Was it decomposing? Oh, washed up. Okay. All right. Let me see. When it started to pollute the good Scottish air, the local citizens poured oil on it and cremated it. Bordeaux, Francais. Bordeaux, France became the unwilling host to another smelly carcass in January of 1960.
Can we talk about the best smelly carcass?
The best?
The one in Japan.
We'll have to get all the facts on that one and tell that story.
Okay.
I can tell you, we went, I can't remember where we went, when I was in the Navy. I think it was, it wasn't Aruba. Bonaire. I think it was Bonaire. We went to Bonaire, and there was a dead whale on the beach, and all the seagulls were eating it and stuff. And it was the worst smelling thing I've ever smelt. I mean, I mean, I don't know how long it was there. Probably a couple of days. It had to have been. But I've shot deer and cut them open, and it didn't smell that bad. Oh my God, this was terrible.
Sea creatures are the worst, especially whales, because they're so large that they decompose within themselves, and there's no easy way for those gases to get out, so it just festers.
And that's what happened in Japan, right?
Yes, it exploded on a McDonald's.
They were carting a whale through the city,
It had
and
washed
all the
up.
gases built up, and the whale just exploded in the middle of town.
Yeah,
that was a funny story. But this one, I mean, I don't know how long it was there because we were just visiting, but I was like, oh, it's a whale carcass. I'm gonna go have a look. I couldn't get within 100 feet of the thing. I got just close enough, and then that smell hit me, and I was like, wow, oh my God, almost knocked me on my ass. Let's see. All right, so we're talking about Bordeaux, France. Became the unwilling host of another smelly carcass in January of 1960, 13 feet long, 10 feet wide, flat head, about 3 feet in diameter. It had huge 6-foot flippers and was covered with thick black hair about 4 inches long. No one ever found out what it was, because nobody wanted to go near it. It was stinking up Cape Ferret Beach, so it was hauled out to sea unceremoniously and dumped. In the summer of 1960, a storm regurgitated an immense hair-covered lobster onto an obscure beach in Tasmania. Once again, the hill folk of Tasmania find a globster on their beach. 3 men, Ben Fenton, Jack Boot, there's no way that's his real name,
Probably not.
and Ray Anthony were rounding up cattle in the area that August when they stumbled across it. They said it was circular and it was covered with short, soft fur. They left it there. Nearly 2 years passed before rumors of this find reached Hobart, the capital of Tasmania, and a naturalist named G.C. Cramp took an interest. In March 1962, he chartered a plane, located the beach, and found the decaying remains half buried in the sand. After 2 years, the crabs didn't pick it apart?
Whales are huge, so, it takes quite a bit to...
What is this? Oh.
I'm just looking at a compilation of exploding whales.
Oh, all right. Let's see. And the weeks that followed, various teams... 2 years, though. Come on. Crabs had to have eaten it in 2 years.
No, not really. Takes a long time to... I mean, we're talking, several tons of animal. Or 100 tons of animal.
But yeah, but they have seagulls and stuff.
But if it's been buried, what's going to eat a buried carcass?
Crabs. In March 1962, he chartered a plane, located the beach, found the decaying remains half buried in the sand. In the weeks that followed, various teams of scientists visited the spot and inspected the creature, if it was a creature. The mass was 8 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 10 inches thick. It contained no bones, spine, or other hard substance, but was made of tough, fibrous material. What kind of tough, fibrous material might it be? Baleen?
Baleen would be in the mouth. But remember I told you about the way their neck is? It's all grooved. That's going to be fairly tough because it expands and fills with water when they take fish in.
Would it be fibrous?
Probably. I mean, having never dissected one, I don't honestly know. But, I mean, whales are fatty by their very nature.
Mm-hmm. I imagine it's the fat that stinks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, rancid fat. Come on.
Yeah. Let's see. It was made of a tough, fibrous material. The scientists were puzzled, tossed around all the classic theories. It was whale blubber. It was remains of a squid. It was an unidentifiable. It was the carcass of a prehistoric animal recently freed from Arctic iceberg. The press in Tasmania and Australia headlined the story belatedly in 1962, and the government lowered a rather peculiar curtain of secrecy over the whole affair. All kinds of idiotic explanations were mouthed by Type B scientists and politicians. Ivan Sanderson collected all the clippings and corresponded with some of the men involved. The first 10 pages of his book, Things, 1967, are devoted to the case. The only possible conclusion is that no one was able to reach any rational conclusion. We do not know what the thing was, where it came from, or strangely, where it finally went. Each year brings more globsters and carcasses to isolated beaches all over the world. On February 10th, 1968, a fisherman named Vincenzo Croce was walking along a beach near Campobello, Sicily, when he noticed some bones sticking out of the sand. They proved to be the remains of a giant lizard which had measured between 23 and 30 feet long.
How do they know it was a lizard?
All it says is they proved to be. So obviously there's proof that they were giant lizard bones.
So we're talking dinosaurs?
It would have to be, right? Well, the sea ones aren't dinosaurs, right? Plesiosaurs and stuff? They're not classified as dinosaurs?
Not technically, no.
Because they weren't living in the time of dinosaurs, right? They lived a different era or something. I was never actually sure.
They're not dinosaurs because they don't come from the same line. They're not dinosaurs in that they're not lizards.
What are they?
They're fishes, actually, I think, in some way.
Really?
Related. I think so. I know they're not dinosaurs because they're not lizards. But I don't remember why.
Were they amphibians?
No. No, they were not.
Let's see. When he noticed some bones sticking out of the sand, they proved to be the remains of a giant lizard, which had measured between 23 and 30 feet long. Some pieces of flesh still clung to the bones, and the spinal column was intact, indicating that the creature had been alive only a short time before. The head was flat and duck-shaped. Thousands of tourists descended on Campobello to take a look at this thing before it was finally carted off to a museum. A sort of scientist soberly informed the world that it was not a whale, tuna, dolphin, or shark. But no one could say what it was. It really could not have been a 30-foot lizard, you see, because there's no such animal. There is now. In July 1968, the Associated Press revealed that Japanese fishermen had hauled up another incomprehensible in the Pacific. I think I've seen this picture before. You ever seen the picture of the supposed plesiosaur they pulled up?
Vaguely recall it.
It's in the net, and you can see it looks like it has the flippers, and it looks like it has a long neck.
Uh-huh.
It's a... Whenever you see things about cryptids and sea creatures, that one almost always comes up, if it's the one I'm thinking of. In July 1968, the Associated Press revealed that Japanese fishermen had hauled up another incomprehensible in the Pacific. It was 6 feet long, weighed 200 pounds, and had 2 side fins sharp as hatchets, and there were 9 thorns scattered on its head and back. Oh yes, it was also covered with polka dots. Maybe it's a different... I don't think that's what looked like I saw in the picture.
Polka dot
So
of the
maybe
Lasmosaurus. I can't wait.
Maybe that's different than the picture I saw. Finally, here is a widely printed news story from Tecolutla, Mexico, March 6th, 1969. Villagers have found a 35-ton sea creature, which is washed up on the beach here. The carcass of the creature was described as about 30 feet long and 18 feet wide, with a serpent-like body covered with hard armor, joined so it would swim. It was also reported to have 10-foot tusk. The creature washed up on February 28th, and marine biologists are studying it in an effort to determine if it belonged to the age of dinosaurs. Mexican authorities on prehistoric sea life say the sea monster could be, turn the page, 50,000 years old. Dr. Bernardo Villa of the National University of Mexico said the creature may have been trapped and preserved in an Arctic iceberg and discovered when the iceberg finally melted. The superstitious fishermen recovered a fin, 2 tusks, and large portions of hide before scientists arrived, but authorities have recovered most of the pieces cut from the animal and turned them over to scientists. The fishermen who sighted the animal insist the animal was alive when they first saw it and only died later. Scientists say the body has not become too decomposed because it still is in salt water. So things don't decompose in salt water?
They decompose differently because the salt kind of inhibits certain things, and it doesn't decompose like it would on land, because on land you've got the air and then you've got bacteria and whatnot. In the sea, you don't really have those kind of bacteria interactions like we have on land.
So is it a different kind of bacteria?
Well, a lot of the consumption is done by the hagfish and all those nasty, nasty, gross, eel type bugs, creatures. I mean, things do decompose, but it takes longer. And
most stuff we get eaten, right, by little fishes and stuff.
Yeah.
And then once it gets to the bottom, all the deep sea fishes eat a lot of that.
Oh yeah,
well,
carcasses on the bottom. Sea snow, yes.
Yeah, they call it sea snow, and stuff decomposes as it works its way down to the bottom. All those really deep sea fish and crabs and all that, they eat all that. Oh, let's see. Let's see. This story certainly has the ring of authenticity, does it? Really? The creature weighed 35 tons. How did they ever weigh it? Yeah, that's my question. There was a couple of these.
Yes.
It was 50,000 years old, but still alive when first seen, and it came out of a melted iceberg thousands of miles north of Mexico. Members of the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained. Can I join the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained?
Yes.
I wonder what you have to be. Like, do you have to be an actual scientist?
I don't know.
You need to Google this. You need to Google Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained. SITU. If I can get a membership, I'm totally going to do it.
For the what? For the
Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained. Let's see. Members of the Society for the Investigation of the Unexplained zeroed in on this case. Excuse me. And quickly smelled whale blubber. The creature was, in fact, a rotting sperm whale, and the tusks were the lower jaw of the mammal. Apparently, a wire service stringer had collected together some rumors and knit them into a story that was flashed around the world.
They no longer exist.
Aww.
It says the dark final days of the C2.
Aww.
Sorry.
Despite hoaxes and misinterpretations of this sort, the evidence for the existence of all kinds of unknown sea creatures is impressive. There are scores of fascinating books devoted exclusively to sea serpent sightings, covering the past several hundred years. Leading scientists and oceanographers have seen these things. We know that giant squid and eels of unbelievable size lurk in the ocean depths. We do not know what else is down there. Occasionally, these monstrous sea creatures do wriggle to the surface, and from time to time they drift ashore and rot on beaches from Sicily to Tasmania, or visit deep water lakes all over the world. And I think that will conclude.
The society ended when he essentially died of cancer.
Who did? The leader?
Yes.
How long was it around?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just noticing the dark final days of the society. It was founded by Ivan Terence Sanderson. He died in 1973. So you never had a chance to become part of the society.
1973? Oh.
Yep. Sorry.
Oh, well. So I think we're going to end the stream here. I've been reading for about 2 hours, roasting this book here. If you want a fun kind of book on mysterious creatures, The Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings by John A. Keel. He also wrote the Mothman Prophecies. If there's anybody here in the chat who has anything they want to talk about, just let me know. Thanks for showing up. We had a couple of people here tonight. I know the Centurions were on. They took a couple hundred people, I think. Sporkman was on earlier. I don't know who's on now. Who else is streaming right now? What am I missing? Nobody's streaming.
You have 5.
Oh, Gary Shipman's on. Let's see. So who's on? Since I got 5 people watching.
2 of them are me.
2 of them are you? But that's the same account.
No.
You have 2. You're driving my hopes up.
Sorry.
Is one of them Junior?
One of them is Junior.
All right, so we get 2 people on here then? Maybe?
Maybe.
Am I
I don't
logged
know.
on?
It doesn't count you, I don't think.
Oh, okay. I don't think I'm logged on.
So.
All right, so we roasted the heck out of this book. We had some fun making fun of all the animals and the weird little stories in here. So maybe we'll do this again next time, because that was kind of fun.
So if you're watching the stream as yourself, yes, it does count.
So, yeah, I think we're going to end it for tonight. For anybody that did show up, thanks for stopping by. And y'all have a good night. That grunting was me reaching for my computer.